Jim, good morning. How are you?
Hey, good morning, Jordy.
Yesterday, good to see you in Baton Rouge, spending a little time at walk-ons and talking to who we believe to be the best player in college football. What was the evaluation of Jayden Daniels like, and then the ultimate decision to get down here to Baton Rouge and extend the invite to him?
Yeah, it was a quick back and forth from Mobile yesterday. It really isn't a bad drive.
Right.
It was pretty quick, but no, I think I talked to you last year about it. I felt like Jayden was the most improved quarterback we saw last year from beginning to end. I was at that Florida State game a year ago, and then saw him middle of the season, and then watching his late tape. I mean, just the comfort level. And now he's gone from comfortable to this year really having full command of that offense and just the position. To me, and you've seen it. I mean, how they've been so good this year. And I think where Jayden's really made his biggest stride, if you wanted to like pinpoint one area, is just the comfort level in the pocket, and then the decision making when to take off, when to use those legs, when to use that speed, and when to hang in there and make that throw. And I think some of the downfield stuff has been better this year as well. And he's got two great playmakers. Let's not avoid that. I mean, Malik Nabers and Brian Thomas are great players, first, second round type talent. So, but Jayden's had a great year, so we wanted to get over there. You brought up Brandon Landry. In my 6 years here at the Senior Bowl, I've been fortunate enough to mix with a lot of people in the business world. Brandon's different, man. He is just as successful as he's come and grown that Baton Rouge-based business. He's just a great guy. He stayed true to himself, and he's just a really easy dude to connect with. So we usually do those in-person invites with walk-ons at smaller schools for like walk-on type players. We did one at Kansas State last week with a all Big 12 tight end at Kansas State who was a walk-on. So we usually don't do it with such a high-profile player, but with Jayden, it just made a lot of sense. So we did it there at Brandon's original location. That's a stone's throw from the football facility in Baton Rouge, and yeah, man, it was great. It was a really fun afternoon.
Yeah, Joe Sloan, the quarterback's coach, who deserves so much credit of the development of Jayden over the last 2 years since he's been on campus, was there at the table with him. It was cool content that came out with that invitation. Jim, obviously you watch a ton of football. Can you talk about the level of quarterback play that you're seeing this season, specifically from this senior class, guys like Penix and Daniels and the crew that's leading the way?
Yeah, I mean, it's a really deep class. I think some of the guys have kind of separated themselves this fall. Going into the year, there were a ton of names. You don't get a lot of household names in college athletics anymore, especially like basketball. These guys are all one and done. But in football, some of these guys are on year 5, year 6 in programs, and so like the Sam Hartmans at Notre Dame, that was a big name coming into the year, transferring from Wake Forest, But yeah, I mean, I think if you look at the top of the quarterback stack and the seniors in whatever order you want to put it, it's probably Bo Nix, Michael Pratt from Tulane, Michael Penix at Washington, and Jayden Daniels at LSU. I think those are the top 4 for us. They're the top 4 for the league. And then you get into the Spencer Rattlers, who's had a really nice season at South Carolina, Joe Milton at Tennessee. Will Howard at Kansas State. I brought up Kansas State. He's having a great year. So yeah, there's a lot of depth to this class. There's a few quarterbacks in this year's class that we in normal years would be here at the Senior Bowl and we'd love to have here. And we're just not going to have room for them this year, especially because now we can bring juniors. So that brings Drake May at North Carolina into play, JJ McCarthy at Michigan, Quinn Ewers at Texas. So it's the ruling that came down last week that we can bring all underclassmen to the game really just ratcheted up the competitive level and the star power of the game, and it's a great thing.
How does that go into your scouting? I mean, I see you at games. I know what you're looking at. You're looking at steady prospect after prospect. I mean, this has opened up a whole new wave of guys for you and your team, right?
It has. I mean, this wasn't new news to us last week. I mean, we've been in talks with the NFL league office since August about this. So our scouts have, we've got 10 scouts all over the country, out in California and Oregon and Arizona, all the way over to the East Coast. And so we were watching the juniors. I think we had reports in on 60 to 70 juniors, but what last week's announcement created was a flood of agent calls and texts to me of juniors that we had not accounted for, right? And they're just kind of fishing for an invite at this point, trying to see that, like, hey, if this guy gets a Senior Bowl invite, he'll leave early, that kind of thing. And now that we've had to circle back and watch the tape on some of those guys, they're not guys we would want in this year's game. They should definitely go back to school. So, the agents play a big part in this thing because of the NIL world. 3 years ago, I think anyone in Baton Rouge would cringe if they saw an agent on their campus, and now you can't keep them out. These guys officially work for the student athletes at LSU, so you have to allow them on campus. So they play a big role, and they're representing freshmen and sophomores right now. So there has just been the junior names have come out of the woodworks in the last week. So that's forced us to scramble a little bit. But for the top guys, the Malik Nabers, the Brian Thomases, the Mason Smith. I mean, guys that were already on our radar, we feel like we have a good handle on. It's these, some of these pop-up guys that we're having to do some extra work on.
Jim, put some perspective on this for us. You saw, obviously, Jefferson and Chase here a couple of seasons ago. What are Malik Nabers and Brian Thomas as far as the evaluation and scouting, kind of not necessarily compared to those guys, but just seeing greatness as close as we did, within the last 5 years? It feels like here it is again.
Yeah, there it is. It's definitely, these two guys are definitely in that caliber. I think, whatever NFL scout you talk to, they're going to have those guys that, in the top 50 to 75 picks and potentially higher. Nabers maybe a little bit higher. So, and they're different players, but they're both playmakers. At the end of the day, that's what the NFL is looking for, is guys that can make plays, whether it's underneath with run after catch, whether it's with speed down the field, or a combination of both. And both those guys are playmakers. I mean, Brian Thomas gets a little overshadowed by Nabers, but he's going to run super fast when he comes out, and he's going to be one of the top height, weight, speed receivers in the draft. And you look at a league right now that's really focused on physical traits of players, and just banking on the physical potential of a guy, sometimes overproduction. And Brian has the production to back it up as well. But teams are going to be enamored with that height, weight, speed, and that's the bottom line. So, two really good ones. I mean, that's kind of been it. LSU's went from DBU to a wide receiver U over the last couple of years. Those two guys have had a great year.
Jim, back to the quarterback. You spent 18 years as an NFL scout. You were on 6 teams that went to a Super Bowl. You were a part of 4 that won the title. How has evaluating quarterback changed in that time period? I mean, it feels like Daniels would not have been, from a skill set standpoint, somebody that would have attracted the NFL maybe even 5, 6 to 10 years ago.
Jordy, I think he would have. Honestly, I'm not trying to go against you. I think he would have because he's a big guy, a tall guy. He's got a nice frame. I joked with him yesterday. The first time I saw Jayden Daniels was in, I think, the fall of 2018, maybe, or 19. It was one of my second year here at the Senior Bowl. And they had a receiver at Arizona State named Brandon Ayuk, who fantasy football players will know because Brandon's become a stud receiver for the 49ers. And we were scouting him on the road at Michigan State. And I think that was Jayden's freshman year, and he was like a $155 or a $160 or whatever he weighed back then. Mm-hmm. So he's put on about 50 pounds. But I think where the evolution of the quarterback position is gone, and I think Drew Brees kind of started it, and then Russell Wilson took it to the next level, and now they're like the Kyler Murrays. It's just the NFL is more open-minded to smaller quarterbacks. But Jayden's a big guy. I think the run aspect, I mean, you can always go back in time, whether it's like Randall Cunningham or Steve Young and guys that have been able to be dual threats. I mean, the league has always liked those guys. I think where the quarterback position has changed in the NFL is teams are just more open to little guys, and we saw that last year with Bryce Young as well.
I saw you at the LSU-Bama game. It seems like that's a game that's regularly on your list. Does that game still stack up as far as the prospects go when you go see the 2023 edition of it?
Yeah, absolutely. No, that's the one game every year. Every scout, every director level guy, over the top scout, GM will be circling every year to get to. This year's version of it, a lot of really good players. I don't know if there was as many first rounders as sometimes we see between those two teams. And again, a lot of LSU's talent is young, and same with Alabama. Alabama's got a lot of young talent too, especially in the secondary. So. Maybe not the high first, it wasn't the Joe Burrow year. It wasn't 2019 where you said first rounders running all over the place, but But certainly in terms of like comparatively to other football games across college football, there's not a better game than that. You'd be hard pressed to find a better NFL scouting game than that game.
Jim, back to Jayden real quick. What's the ceiling on him from a draft standpoint? I mean, could he legitimately be a top 10 pick?
I think that's unrealistic right now.
Uh-huh.
I told him the other day, I told him yesterday when we spoke, I was in the press box at the Alabama game and sitting next to a couple guys that I worked a long time in the league with. And I asked one of them, I said, where do you think Jayden goes? And he said, 4th. Cool. And I see Jayden as a higher draft pick than that myself. And so when Jayden was doing what he was doing against Florida the other night, I texted him, I'm like, I don't think he's getting to the 4th. But again, and this isn't particular to Jayden. The draft media is really dangerous, right? Like they suit these kids up for gold jackets really early, and there's no accountability. So unfortunately, sometimes players read that, their families read that, they buy into it, their friends buy into it, and then they're just setting themselves up for a huge letdown. So like when I get with players and they ask me, like I won't offer it up, but if they want to know where they're projected, like the real information, like I always tell them, because there's nothing worse on draft weekend than a disappointed player. They should be excited about going on to the next level, regardless of where they get picked. So, I think Jayden's going to go somewhere on day 2. I mean, that's where he is probably right now. If we had calls with 15 teams trying to put our roster together. So I do feel like I've got a pretty good handle on Jayden's range, but yeah, I would say probably in that second to 4th area for most teams. I don't know if we talked to anyone that had him in the 1st. So right now, top 10 seems really premature.
I saw Kevin Mawai made the all 75 edition of the Senior Bowl. When you go down the list, Jim, of the players that have been in this game, I mean, it's incredible to see the amount of talent that has run through Mobile in the lead up to the draft. How difficult was it to make that team?
Really hard, man. There were some really tough cuts. So, we did a fan vote we did like a 5-week fan vote online, got, a couple 100,000 votes for that. And then we pulled all 32 NFL GMs. That was part of it. That was cool. I had to hound a couple of those guys to get their ballots in, but we got it done. And then we've got a Senior Bowl Hall of Fame committee that really kind of, when it was really close, in the really close ones were like at defensive end. The 2 guys that were clear were Michael Strahan, former New York Giant, and then DeMarcus Ware from the Dallas Cowboys.
Right.
2 pretty good ones. And then the guy that got in, it was down to the 3rd spot was between Jason Taylor from the Miami Dolphins and Dwight Freeney from the Colts. And Taylor ended up. Yeah, so when Dwight Freeney gets beat out for your 75th team, you've got a pretty good roster. And then the other one was at wide receiver. The receivers were Terrell Owens was the top vote getter, and then it was Torrey Holt, who's got a gold jacket, Reggie Wayne, who will have a gold jacket, and then that 4th spot came down to Hines Ward and Chad Johnson. And Hines Ward got the nod. More Pro Bowl, Super Bowl MVP. So that's what you're talking about at some of these positions. I mean, we put Kevin Falk in our Senior Bowl Hall of Fame a couple years ago, and he finished way down the line at running back. I mean, I think he was, finished like 8th or 9th in the balloting for running back. So, it was really fun putting together that team. I connected with Kevin the other day. I'd met him a couple times before, but reaching out to all these guys, and letting them know, and we're going to be able to bring them back to Mobile. The NFLPA is sponsoring our 75th anniversary celebration. Oh, wow. So it'd be one thing to name this team, but it's a whole another level, like to bring them back to Mobile and get them here for game week. So we're going to be able to do that. We're really excited about it. We sent out these really awesome packages to the players this week. There'll be some great content coming out of some NFL teams. I know the Saints are doing something with Jimmy Graham about it. So no, it's been a really cool thing, really fun.
When do you finalize the roster?
That's going to be way more of a fluid process now that this junior thing is involved and the NIL. Man, like 2 years ago, we would invite players. This roster was locked in by probably December 10th. Might lose a guy that got injured during training, or an agent might pull a guy once Daniel Jeremiah puts him in his top 25 or something leading into the game. But for the most part, it was locked in. I think now we can't even invite the juniors until they officially declare. So that's going to be a waiting game. And then this NIL money, we lost a bunch of players last year that were committed to playing the game, and then their coaching staff huddled up after the year, and they got the collective involved, and they ponied up enough money to get them back on campus. So it is truly a fluid process. We might not have this roster done until the Saturday before player arrival day on Sunday, late in January. So we'll see.
What a cool process this has become, Jim, and what a cool game and week and everything that you have made this, man. You and your team have done a fantastic job over the last 6 years. I mean, I think Walk-On's sponsoring the week of practice says just about all of it. Thank you as always for your time. Great insight, and we'll link up again soon.
Yeah, Jordy, thanks for having me back on, man. I appreciate it. Have a good rest of your week and have a great Thanksgiving holiday.
There he is, Jim Nagy, the executive director of the Reese's Senior Bowl over in Mobile.
Thanks for tuning in to our premium LSU content right here on YouTube. If you want more of it, subscribe below.